We are Team A and we'll be presenting Splat 2.0. At the beginning of the week, we were tasked with extending and completing a VAC Week 1 solution. This game had to test the conceptual understanding of the problem-solving skills of an applicant, while keeping in mind functionality and fun. We present Splat. Splat requires players to navigate through levels of mazes using Blockly command blocks.
Now let's meet the sprites. What are these beautiful images on the screen? Well, the first one in the first row is called the paint splat. Now the paint splat changes the color of your arrow, and then the sprite to the right is the gate, and you can only pass through that gate if your arrow matches the color of the gate. The second row, we have a locked gate and an acid. Now the acid also affects your arrow. This changes your arrow to acid, and once you're acid, this will allow you to break through the locked gate because the lock melts. Then the third row, we have the mixer. The first sprite is the mixer. What happens is you mix the color of your arrow into this mixer, and you can mix different colors there, and that color is then outputted to the jar, which is the sprite to the right, and you can go collect that color with your arrow at the jar. Then the fourth row, we have the bank. Now the bank allows you to deposit colors in one of the collection sites, as you can see to the right. Those collection sites are numbered, and you can basically store any color that your arrow is. You can store the color that your arrow is at one of these sites, and you can go collect it later. And then in the final row, we have the arrow, which is the character basically which you play, and the goal of the game is to reach the flag when your arrow is the same color. So you have to match color with the flag, and once you reach the flag with the correct color, you win the game. Thank you.
So what's new? We added automatic scoring, which takes the player's given solution, then compares it to the efficiency of our solution and scales the score accordingly. We added function blocks. We also added data types with different types of splat sprites. We better demonstrated the use of arrays. We added a sandbox mode, which is a tutorial where players can freely interact with our sprites. We also extended the workspace to save solutions. We added new levels, and then lastly, we improved the UI.
Possibilities for future development are a database connection to store the applicant's information, a ranking scoreboard to keep track of the applicants and the scores they got for the assessment. This will make it easier to filter out the applicants that did not meet the basic criteria. Predicted proficiency. This means that the system will be able to calculate the proficiency of the applicant after they completed the assessment. Then the marker can compare the predicted proficiency with the proficiency that the applicant is supposed to have. For example, a matric applying for first year should in theory have a lower proficiency than a third year applying for honours. So, if the predicted proficiency of the matric is higher than it should be, they can be a potential bursar. Or, if the third year has lower predicted proficiency than they should, they might not be a potential bursar. Next is to add recursive function calls with the Blockly blocks, so that an applicant can optimize their solutions to make it more efficient. And a very important and highly recommendable is to optimize the map loading time. And then last but not least, a time limit for the tutorial level.
Hello, my name is Konrad Voss, and this is a demonstration of Splat. This screen is the intro screen which the applicants will see when they start the session, and just clicking on the start session button brings us to the tutorial level. As you can see, the tutorial level loaded in, and we have this path here that the applicant can follow, which will introduce all of the concepts in the game to them one at a time, just to familiarize them with the concepts. We also have this code block here, which will be explained later in a bit more detail, as well as a few buttons over here. Now, this arrow is the player character, essentially. In only the tutorial level, you can move using the arrow keys, WASD, or these buttons down here. So I can move up and down, left, right, and so forth with the arrow keys, or I can click on this button to turn my arrow and walk forward and such. So when we encounter our first splat, it will say what exactly this was, what happened. You changed from orange to red, so now you can pass through this red gate. So it just says you are the correct color to go through the gate, and now we introduce the mixers. The mixers are kind of like functions. It tests whether it can test whether the applicant understands the concept of functions, since you have a few inputs of the color that the arrow currently is. So that's one input to the mixer, and then so now we basically input red, so change that to red, and now we input blue as well, and the mixer's function is to mix those two colors together, and it produced purple at the jar. So the purple is like the output of the function that can be used at a later stage. So now we just move on to the jar, and now we turn purple since we collected the result of that mix. Now we can move through the purple gate, and now we are going to encounter acid. Acid is used to melt through these locked gates, and it's also not really compatible with other colors in mixers. When you mix acid with colors, the acid overwrites the colors, but that will be explained later when we come to this open area. So the acid can melt through these locked gates. As you can see, the gate's now melted, and we can continue. It just says that we turned yellow here, and now the concept of banks are being introduced. Banks are essentially the place where we test variables and more arrays with indexes, and whether they know they can place certain data, pieces of data at certain indexes. So now we want to place this yellow at index number 1, which is over here, since this is right before the yellow gate. So when we deposit it in number 1, we see, yeah, that gray turned into yellow, and that's just right for the yellow gate. But now when we continue, we see we can't go through this green gate, since this collection site number 2 is gray, and it won't allow us to pass through here. So when we come back, we can just collect this green, and when we go back, it says, yes, you should deposit the green in here. And now that we completed this bank tutorial, we can finally get out of this path that introduced all of the concepts. Now in this open area, we can just test a bit of the functionality. We can see we can't pass through any of these gates if we aren't the correct color, but if we go collect the correct color, you can see we can't go through red, we can't go through green, we can't go through this locked one, but we can go through the orange gate. So it's just to introduce, to allow the applicant to play around in this area for about 15 minutes or so before they start the test. So also you can see when you collect the acid, your arrow becomes acid, but it doesn't keep you from becoming another color when your arrow is the acid, since you still need to be able to work with the other colors. But when you are acid, you can't pass through regular gates, but these locked gates you can melt through, like introduced earlier, And you can also see that when you collect another color, you can pass through these melted gates. So we can also here test the mixing functionality. We can mix again blue and let's say yellow, which should produce green, which it did. So yeah, we can just go and collect green again, see, okay, we can deposit this in say number 4, and now this is green. So this is easy to test. You can also see what happens when you say mix green and yellow, a secondary color and a primary color, which will produce kind of a garbage value, which is represented as just a mixture of random colors, as you can see here. So when you collect this, this color is now not viable for any use. It can still pass through these gates because any color can pass through that gate. But yeah, and when you try to mix in any new colors, say we want to mix in red, it won't change. If you want to mix in gray, it won't change. So a way to neutralize this, if you test a bit, you'll find that this acid can neutralize that goop of colors, since acid can overwrite any of these colors. But now that this jar is contaminated with acid, we won't be able to mix any new colors in there. Fortunately, gray neutralizes acid. So when we go, it turns back to gray. And now we can mix colors again. So this is basically the tutorial, just to get the applicant used to how everything functions, get them familiar with the actual functionality of the game. This code piece, this code window, is also used when we reset the stage. You can see that we have a bunch of code blocks essentially in here, which we phrased in such a way that it doesn't seem intimidating to people who aren't familiar with code blocks, with coding. So for instance, these are function blocks essentially, but we name them reusable moves, since a person who's seeing code for the first time won't necessarily know what a function is, but saying reusable moves and then saying we can use these reusable moves allows more generalization of these code blocks. So when you run these code blocks, let me just delete this, and we can say walk 2 times, and then when I run, this arrow should walk 2 steps forward. And it says it's an unsuccessful attempt because it didn't reach the end, but that doesn't matter in the tutorial because there isn't an end. It's just when the applicant feels ready to continue to the actual assessment, or when the time for the tutorial runs out, they will continue to the next levels. This code window also has a delete function, like this trash can deletes your current code blocks. You have, let's just place something on again. You have zoom in and zoom out for if you have a lot of stuff on screen, and you have a center. So when we start the easy level, the applicant will automatically start this level when the time runs out, or when they choose to start the assessment. They won't be able to choose any of the following stage levels, because how the assessment works is you do the easy level. When you completed the easy level, you go on to the normal level, and then when you completed that, to the rookie medium, and so forth. And you want to complete as much as you can in the allotted time. So each stage starts with this start code block. It's just to make it obvious that you should start with this block, so that you don't start with other random blocks, so that you don't place walk wherever, and when you click run it doesn't work. So because now if I click run it won't work, I need to place walk inside the start block, and only then will you walk forward. Now obviously that was an unsuccessful attempt, since we didn't reach the flag as the color purple. So now the applicant is able to build whatever they want in here, and they can essentially then execute their code. If you click stop, the stage resets, and you can just see what happens exactly. So it walked forward 3 of these little squares, and then it turned left, which is exactly what we wanted it to do. But these different code blocks have everything that's necessary to optimize your coding time. If you just place a bunch of walk statements, it will work, but that won't be optimal. You'll take a really long time to complete all the stages. So this also kind of tests whether they understand they can be optimal. They can optimize their decisions. So we can say repeat walking until the flag is reached. Now in this instance it won't work because you need to be purple, and for that we need to mix the red and blue, but when we run this you'll see it continues. It is unsuccessful since it's blue but the flag wants purple. Now this preview will just show you the exact solution. This preview won't be available for the applicants to see, since this gives the solution, and since we want to test the applicants on whether they can find the solution, showing them the solution will just test whether they can repeat what they saw, which isn't what we want to test. We want to test if they can figure it out for themselves. So this preview function is only for demonstration purposes. It isn't at all going to be seen by the applicants. But when I reset again and do the preview again, you will see that we get a score at the end. It says success, we have reached the end, and it gives a score summary. It says the memo time is 3,700 milliseconds, and the solution we provided found the end in 3,620 milliseconds. That means that we scored 100% for this level, or 5 out of 5 marks. Each level is scored differently based on how difficult they are. So when we also have these save and load functions and these reusable move functions. When we use these reusable move functions, we can use as much as we want. We can say use 2 of them, and this will be our first one, this will be our second one, and we can even call them out of order. So we can call 2 and then call 1, but then this reusable moves 1 will say repeat until the tile ahead, let me just reorder this a bit, is a wall. So it will repeat whatever action you give it until a wall is ahead. This reusable move 2, we can say repeat until the current tile is, let's say, a mixer. So up until here, we can say it should walk until a mixer is reached. And then we can say turn left, so it should then call the second function, which will walk until the mixer, turn left, and then it should walk until it reaches the wall. And as you can see, that's exactly what happens. And obviously this is an unsuccessful attempt. We can then save these solution we provided in order to say we accidentally deleted our code somehow. We can now just load this back in. This will also be available throughout the levels. So say we now completed easy level and now we continue to the normal level. When the stage finishes loading, we can just load in our blocks, and we have all our blocks. Now the normal level tests your understanding of loops. You will need to use loops to optimize this, because if you just use a bunch of these walk blocks, this level will take way too long. The provided solution, as you can see, you need to mix red in here and blue in there as well, and then you can just start looping until you reach the end, and then it will give you your score. So we can then again use these functions we saved from the previous level. We can just reuse them if they're useful to us. If they're not useful to us, we don't have to use them. We also have this. Okay, so as you can see, it was a success. The arrow reached the purple flag while the arrow was purple. The memo time, the provided solution time, and we scored 100% since well, this is the preview is essentially the memo time. We have this deposit which will be in the next level, which will be explained in the next level. So when this level is completed, the game will automatically continue to the next stage. Again, we start with this, but we can just load in our previous blocks. This will save a lot of time. If, for instance, if you already have a bunch of these function blocks, or if you have some loops in your starting block which you want to save and reuse, it's a great tool for that. Now I'll just start running the preview here. So you can see we have a bank site over here, and we have 3 collection sites. What this level tests is whether the applicant understands the concept of indexes. They need to store the correct colors or values in the correct indexes to use them to get through these gates. Because if they don't have the correct value or color stored in this index, they will be trapped in here. Okay, so it just says success, we have a score of 100%. But now, when they have, say, green in this, saved in this index, in this collection site, and they come all the way in here, they collect it, and now they can't go through this gate or through this gate. So they need to know they need to save this index, essentially this collection site, as a green or as a red site before they come through this gate, otherwise they won't be able to go back. So this just essentially tests whether they understand the concept of they can save this data and use it later, and also that they can use different indexes to save different data. But it has to be of the same type, since ACID cannot be stored in a bank. When you try to store ACID in a bank, the game says, I can even show you in the tutorial again, the game says that you cannot store ACID, since that is basically a different data type to the paint, and you cannot mix different data types. That's also why when you try to mix ACID with a color, the ACID overrides that color, and you need to neutralize it again with the gray. So now I'm just going to quickly get the ACID And when I try to deposit the acid, and let's say I try to deposit it in number 4, it'll say you cannot deposit acid. So this is essentially what this Ricky medium level tests, whether you understand these indexes, whether you understand you cannot mix the incorrect data type, and yes. So again, loading works. The medium level, the hard level, and the Dark Souls level are still the same as the previous group who started the Splat project. It's still the same levels they created, which just tests some more optimized functionality, whether you can optimize your way through these mazes, and they essentially just get harder and harder with each level. But you have to complete the easier levels before you can continue through the harder levels. And when your time is finally up, you will see that that in this attempt I used 22 minutes to complete this assessment. This will be helpful in ranking players, or just when you have a set limit, like you have 2 hours to complete the assessment or something. You can use this time elapsed, or this just shows you if multiple people completed every level, who completed it the fastest. And as you can see here, for our easy level, we had 5 out of 5. For our normal, we have 10 out of 10. For our Ricky medium, we have 15 out of 15. But since we didn't complete medium, we have 0 out of 15, and same with hard and Dark Souls. So it gives us a total score of 30 out of 100, since 5 plus 10 plus 15 equals 30. And thank you. That was the demo of Splat.